Welcome to this episode of the Shared Security Podcast. And this week, I'm really excited to welcome very special guest, Jen VanAntwerp, founder of Sober in Cyber. Welcome to the podcast, Jen.
Thank you, Tom. I'm excited and honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I am honored to have you on the podcast because I want to thank you for everything you're doing with Sober in Cyber. I think it's so important to provide an alternative to, I think, all the alcohol-infused cybersecurity events that we're all just so used to in the industry. And the other thing I really like about Sober in Cyber and everything that you're doing is that you're giving people, even if they don't have a problem with alcohol, an alternative to even taking a break from an alcohol-related event or just to do something different at a conference. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And for someone who's been sober for 8 months now, I just really appreciate this alternative, and I hope others do as well.
One of the most surprising things to me since I started this organization is just the fact that the events have been attended by people just across the board, whether folks are sober or not. And I've gotten really great feedback about the fact that people can have professional networking conversations, not shouting over, super loud spitty talkers or really loud music, and just actually engage in that professional networking, which at the end of the day is what I feel the goals of some of the events really should be. But bigger picture too, it's providing community opportunities for folks who are choosing a sober, alcohol-free lifestyle too. So a lot of facets there. So thank you so much for having me. Excited to talk about it.
So maybe to start, can you tell our listeners just a little bit about you and your background?
Yeah. So I have been in cybersecurity now for about 4 or 5 years, but I started my marketing career in automotive industry, and I've been in marketing for about 20 years. So started in automotive for a little over a decade, and then was in healthcare for about 6 or 7 years. Loved healthcare. But each networking event, no matter what industry I've been in, has been almost exactly the same. So this is not unique to cybersecurity either. Each networking event is typically revolving around alcohol for whatever reason. It's either a happy hour or a whiskey tasting or a wine pairing or a bar crawl. And I've found ways, I've been sober for 23 years myself. So I've found ways to navigate those networking events and find ways to, always have a sparkling water in my hand, or those different little tips and tricks that people learn as we try to go to these events and be sober at the same time. But in the back of my mind, I always had this daydream, like, how cool would it be to be able to go to an event, a networking event, and have absolutely no pressure to drink, no pressure whatsoever. Because typically people are just trying to be polite when they say, hey, what would you like to drink? But it turns into a whole conversation, a whole thing when you don't drink alcohol. Thankfully, folks in cybersecurity have actually been pretty good about not pressuring others to drink. But the events themselves really do focus so much on alcohol that there are times when I just don't attend the events if I'm not feeling like, subjecting myself to that environment. And that really is a tragedy because so many great conversations and networking opportunities happen at those types of events. I always joke that, a deal might start at the booth, but the close of the deal happens at the bar. And a lot of great chances to meet people who can help you further your career or get your next deal happen at those networking events. So having more alternative options for people to attend where everybody feels welcome, it's just a big win across the board. And they're fun. That's one of the goals I've tried to make it really fun. So it started kind of selfishly with, I wanted to throw parties that I wanted to go to, and it's turned into a whole other, fantastic altruistic thing, which is just wonderful.
Yeah, I completely agree. I often wonder, why. I don't think people do it like maliciously, right? When we have events with alcohol, it just has become kind of part of our culture. I mean, not just in cybersecurity, like you mentioned, in other industries, this is very common as well. But I think it's a society challenge that we have as well, where it's just drinking has become just such a common thing that people do. And I find it fascinating, when I tell people I'm sober and they know me as someone that used to drink quite a bit. And Now that I don't drink, it's kind of like you get this puzzled look of like, what do you mean you don't drink? Like, you mean you don't drink alcohol? Like,
Boggles the mind.
are you okay? Like,
One of the first things that people usually say after I say, oh, no, I don't drink. Because after the first time, I'm like, oh, what would you like to drink? No, I'm good. And if they keep pushing, I'll just say, no, actually, I'm sober. It's so funny because one of the first things people usually say is, oh, I'm so sorry. And not that they're sorry that I'm sober,
right.
but it's like they feel uncomfortable then. And that's the farthest thing that I ever want. Like, I think these events have become so focused on alcohol because, I mean, it does work. I'm a marketer. I've put together different events where, alcohol, is going to be a draw. And that's just the way that it has been for eon. But I really feel like the past couple of years, the tide has started to shift. I'm not sure if part of it was in COVID. A lot of people struggled a lot. Like a lot of folks struggled with, mental wellness and with addiction in general. So as we're all starting to kind of come out of that, we're all looking at ourselves and thinking like, okay, this needs to change. I need to do something differently. And I also feel like the younger generations, I've met so many younger folks lately who have never had alcohol at all, which that just blows my mind because it was such a part, the reason why I got sober is because I did have a problem with it. But it's really interesting to hear some of the younger generation coming up and saying, no, I really want to go to these events because I don't drink, I've never drank, and it just seems like it'll be more fun and more engaging without it. So it's promising. It's really exciting to see that tide start to shift. And I think our events in general are going to start moving in that direction too. I've seen it the past few years with more things being either some type of an active event or something where they'll at least have a mocktail or some alternative option. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to your comments on the younger generation or the new generation coming into cybersecurity, I think it's really important that we cultivate a culture, an environment that's friendly and welcoming to that new generation, right? And like you said, I mean, I see this with my own kids. They're not drinking like we used to when we were growing up or going through school. Right. I mean, they sit around and play video games, with their friends all day, and that's cool. I mean, I get that. But it is interesting to see kind of the change in perspective on alcohol and drugs and all that in general. It's kind of interesting.
Hey everyone, it's Scott Wright here, CEO of ClickArmor and of course co-host of the Shared Security podcast. If your organization uses boring cybersecurity training, and even if you're using live phishing simulations, your people may be vulnerable to being tricked by things like phishing and social engineering threats. In my experience, there's often a real belief among security management that employees actually understand, learn, retain knowledge, and know how to apply the guidance that they get from clicking through some static content or watching a video, and how to apply that to live simulations or even real cyber attacks immediately after taking the training. But in reality, the actual gap is quite large, and management is making a whole bunch of bad assumptions. So how do you actually get people to retain knowledge and be ready? They need engaging, interactive training with a chance to practice what they've learned, and a way to do that regularly with emerging threats. That's where ClickArmor adds unique value. If you want to go beyond compliance checkboxes and really build a resilient team, then reach out to us at clickarmor.ca and get a free demonstration of the platform and your own trial site. You'll see how our interactive gamified security platform lets employees build their confidence in facing real-world phishing and social engineering threats. And you'll discover how easily you can get valuable employee proficiency data before you spend time and effort on live simulations. And thanks for listening to the Shared Security Podcast.
Talk to me about Sober and Cyber and the mission and what you guys are doing in the industry.
The initial mission, the vision that I had, was really just focused around the events themselves. I wanted to start throwing events that had no alcohol whatsoever, so there was zero pressure to drink. And because I'm looking at things through my own filter, initially I thought it would be more for folks like you and I who, don't drink for whatever reason. But one of the surprising things was seeing the variety of people that were coming to attend the events. Our launch event was just before Defcon last year in 2023, and it was the Sober Speakeasy at the Mob Museum in Las Vegas, and it was an absolute blast. there were folks there from all different walks of life. So that was our launch event. And we also have a Discord community for sober folks within our space where we do just networking and share resources and tips. We have a once a month meetup. So folks who are sober within cybersecurity, feel free to join that Discord. But it's morphed from just the events themselves to now hosting some different mocktail drinks at other events, because I know not every conference can afford to have an alcohol-free event, nor would everyone want to do that. So hosting different mocktails or other options, as well as speaking. I've done a few speaking engagements, kind of trying to get outside of my shell and stop being so scared about public speaking and talking
Nice.
about this topic more publicly. And hopefully that raises awareness, because I think if people haven't struggled in this area, it might not even be something that they consider when they're planning an event. But once I see the light bulb switch on so many times when I'm talking to people about my struggles, because like, God, I just never even thought about it from their perspective. And why would they have if they never struggled with it? So just trying to switch on some more of those light bulbs, getting people to think about these things proactively as they're planning their conferences and their events. It's grown into a community of sober people, but also a lot of supporters who are there to help spread the word and just make events more inclusive in general.
Yeah, I think it's great. So would your advice be if, like, say you're a marketer or you're someone in a company or organization that's looking to host an event, maybe without alcohol, can they contact you and Sober and Cyber and find out more information?
Definitely. Absolutely. I will talk all day long about this. It's something I'm really, really passionate about. And I do have the marketing background too. So I'm able to look at it from a few different perspectives as someone who is sober and has been finding ways to, navigate through events for the past couple decades, but also a marketer who helps to promote these different events. So for sure, drop me a line. Our website is soberandcyber.org. And so we've got, donation page. We have events, soberandcyber.org/events, where you can see upcoming events that we're going to be hosting or participating in. If people are interested in just learning more about the, alternative options at events in general, for sure, reach out. Or if you want to sponsor any of our upcoming events, that's really helpful as well.
Yeah, and we'll have all those links in the show notes for everybody to check out, especially the Discord. I'm a member of the Discord as well. I think it's great. I love the community that you started there. And then I was also at your RSA event in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and that was just a phenomenal event. The mocktails were just off the hook. They were just so good.
So good. Thanks to Better Bar. That was fantastic. They did a great job.
Yeah, they really did. And just the people I met, and you had lots of swag to give away and food, and it was just an amazing event. So if that's kind of like the example of the events that you're going to be hosting for like Black Hat and Defcon, people definitely need to check that out because it was really well organized.
That's been one of my biggest goals. I'm a little bit extra myself just in general, and I want these events to be exciting. I think one of the misunderstandings that people have about sobriety is that it's boring. And oh my God.
Yeah.
Farthest thing from boring. I can stay out later than I did when I drank. I can stay out and party till 2 a.m. doing karaoke if I want to. And I'll remember everything about it the next day, which with my karaoke voice isn't always great. But sober doesn't have to mean somber. It really does not. And I want the events to be so cool and so buzzworthy that people want to attend them and that they can see these can really be fun and engaging events. When I was looking at the registration list from that RSA event, the thing that surprised me was that we had a lot of C-suite executives registering for the event, which maybe it shouldn't have surprised me because I feel like once people have been in their career for a while, you've gotten through some of the learning experiences from earlier on, and you realize, okay, no, this is an event that you can get behind. I want them to all be just that cool. So we definitely need support from sponsors to be able to.
Yes.
It's really helpful. We had some fantastic sponsors at that event, and just seeing the response from the community has been overwhelmingly good. I wasn't sure when I first had the idea, when I first started talking about it. It was something that I really wanted to do, that I was very passionate about, but I didn't know if if it was gonna resonate, and it really, really has. So that's been just amazing.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you, because I think it's absolutely successful. I know hopefully this podcast will continue to spread the word about the great things that you're doing with Sober and Cyber. And hopefully everybody that's listening to this, that's going out to Black Hat and Defcon coming up in August, will be able to attend your events. So we'll have a link in the show notes for all of that. And of course, pay attention to our social media too, as whenever there's new events coming out from Sober and Cyber, I'll be retweeting that. Our shared security accounts will be doing that as well, and try to get more people involved and keep spreading the word.
Definitely. Yeah, I won't stop. It is one of the things where it's been a balance of respecting folks' anonymity, because I think in cybersecurity in general, we're very focused on privacy and security, as we should be. But I think in recovery, especially, not everybody is going to be as loud and obnoxious about their struggles and their journey as I'm willing to be. And I want to be really respectful of that for everyone within the Discord or elsewhere. So making sure that people have the ability to join and be part of a community while maintaining whatever levels of anonymity they're comfortable with is really important.
Yeah, I love that, because you're right. Recovery in a lot of ways is private for people. A lot of people won't talk about it. I personally haven't really voiced, this is like actually publicly, I guess my first, public coming out, so to speak, of like my sobriety. Obviously close friends of mine, my family, everybody knows that, but I personally want to kind of share more of my story too to people. And I think just like you, and I know you gave a really good ShmooCon talk as well, kind of sharing your journey, which I'll link that as well. I think people should definitely watch that. And I think that's great, because now through what you're doing, you're creating that community for people where, it is a safe space, right? For people to, maybe talk more about their journey, or like I talked about when we started the podcast here, of like, people just need a break sometimes from all the alcohol, and maybe Absolutely. They just want to continue to drink, and that's okay too. But I think that's the important part of the community you're building, is just, we welcome everybody, right? No matter where you're at on your journey, I think is really important.
Yes. And the events too are open to everyone, no matter whether you're sober or not. Like you mentioned, if you want to just have a break, say it's like day 3 or day 4 in Las Vegas and you're like crusty and feeling great.
Yeah.
Come have a few mocktails. Our next event is going to be August 8th in Vegas during Hacker Summer Camp. It's going to be at the Mob Museum again. It was such a fantastic event last year. I kind of want to make that an annual outing. So it'll be the Sober Speakeasy event. We'll have a password and everything that will send a registrant so that you can kind of sneak in through the back entrance at like the old timey speakeasies. And we'll have fantastic food, amazing mocktails, great networking, maybe some games too. I always try to have a little something extra. We had crafts at the RSA event, and we've done some different like games and crafts at other events too, just so there's something a little bit different to do other than, eat, drink the mocktails and talk to other folks in cyber, which is usually enough. But like I said, I'm extra.
I love it. Well, I'll be there this year, and hopefully other listeners will be registering as well, and looking forward to it. All right, Jen. Well, thank you so much for the conversation and for coming on the podcast. Love what you're doing, and hopefully continue to get the word out about Sober and Cyber. So thank you
so much for having me, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts, follow us on X @SharedSec, and help support the podcast by joining our Patreon to get ad-free episodes, bonus content, and many more exclusive supporter-only benefits. Visit sharedsecurity.net/supporter for more details.